To look for solace is to learn to ask fiercer and more exquisitely pointed questions, questions that reshape our identities and our bodies and our relation to others.
Okay.
Nice. To look for solace is to learn to ask the fiercer questions, Kaustubha.
Fierce. What's the
Fierce.
definition of fierce, Mara?
Thank you for asking.
Questions
I'm
that
sure
reshape
this David
our
White is someone that
identities.
carefully considered his words, so
Hmm.
what did he mean by fierce?
Fierce. Violently hostile or
Okay, there we go.
temperament, or marked by unrestrained zeal or
Okay.
vehemence.
Okay.
I read it more like
Marked by
very
unrestrained
deeply
zeal.
pointed questions.
Yeah,
you know?
maybe questions that aren't afraid to
Mm.
confront,
okay.
they can be confrontational, like maybe even confronting
yeah.
ourselves.
One of those, what are you doing with your life question.
Okay.
Ever ask those questions? Sometimes we treat these big questions like they're like a novelty, like something to just dabble in. Well, what's the purpose of life?
Like philosophical
Yeah,
questions.
let's go out and talk about that. Let's make that our conversation at the cafe today or at the coffee shop, and conversation at a cocktail party. But the truth is, it's not like a hobby to ask these questions. These are like the essential questions that you should have scripted in your brain already with some answers. Because whether we know it or not, we're building our house of, it's a foundation of what we build every day. It's the why we go to work. It's the why we save money. It's the why we have a family. It's the foundation of everything. And it's like we are building massive mansions sometimes without a foundation on shifting sand.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily spiritual podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha. It's Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. This is episode 1607. Welcome to the show. Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We're here live with Miss Mara, Bunky, and have the good fortune having Sachinandana Swami here, whom we love and is part of our Wisdom of the Sages family. We just had a wonderful day with him yesterday. And Gaur Krishna is also here, his assistant.
Wow.
And he's heading down to the big Sadhu Sangha retreat that's happening in Orlando this weekend. And we're having our Wisdom of the Sages. Everyone's going to start piling in tomorrow. Don't pile in today. We're not ready for you.
We're coming.
Kaustubha,
Yes,
how are
sir.
you? You excited to come upstate?
I am. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, great. Looking forward to having you. We were hoping for one sunny day because all the peonies are ready to burst, but I feel like we need a big, strong sunny day, and it's been sort of overcast the last few days. We'll see what happens. It could be magic because we've got thousands of peonies ready to bloom.
Raghunath, it's all magic.
It is magic, Kaustubha. It is magic. But sometimes people can't see the magic unless the blossom happens. Krishna is everywhere.
There you go.
But sometimes people need to see Krishna. So
That's what I'm trying to help you with.
I can help here. In the form of a flower, Kaustubha, sometimes you can look into that flower and you can see the face and the smile of God. You know that?
I didn't know that until you just revealed it. Thank you.
God is there in the flowers. You doing good? Everything good there?
Yeah.
Have you been getting outside with this bad weather?
I get outside every day. Even if it rains, I go out and I walk. I got my umbrella out and I go.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Sometimes it's the nicest time when it's raining because it's like, if you go in the park, there's hardly anybody there.
Yeah. We were with Divya from Divya's Kitchen.
Divya's a very special lady.
Yeah, special lady and her husband, who I haven't seen in a while, and Krishna Kumari, who was nice. and some other cool people we met. Anyway, let's dive
Yeah,
into
let's get
our
into this.
Mara's
Announcements.
announcements. Hi, Mara.
Good morning.
Mara was
Hi,
sick
Mara.
a little yesterday. She just slept for like 17 and a half hours,
About that.
only to be beaten by Gore Krishna, who slept 20 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Gore Krishna is actually sick, though. I'm not sick.
Oh,
I just
You were
needed
just
a little rest,
exhausted?
yeah.
Okay. All right, Mara, what's up?
Good morning. I don't think I have any announcements today.
oh, Kamara's
Okay.
just winding things down. No announcements. No
No
need to fake it. No need to whip something up.
Okay, well, why don't you just read a nugget then, Miss Mara?
Okay, we have a
Yeah.
nugget today from David White.
Do you know who that is?
I don't.
David White
No.
is an Anglo-Irish poet, author,
Anglo-Irish poet.
Anglo-Irish poet, author, and speaker renowned for his profound explorations of the human experience through poetry and prose.
That's what I did in Shelter.
Yes, yeah, you were the bard of your generation.
Mm.
And
I'm an Anglo
you were an Anglo-Irish
poet.
but
I just got to work on my bio. It's all how you present yourself to the
no,
public.
Raghunath, you really don't.
I think you've worked enough on your bio.
And, but this nugget is from a book he wrote called Consolations. Consolations, the solace, nourishment, and underlying meaning of everyday words.
Okay. David White says, to look for solace is to learn to ask fiercer and more exquisitely pointed questions, questions that reshape our identities and our bodies and our relation to others.
Okay.
Nice. To look for solace is to learn to ask the fiercer questions, Kaustubha.
Fierce. What's the
Fierce.
definition of fierce, Mara?
Like,
Ah,
oh,
thank you for asking.
questions
I'm
that
sure
reshape
this David
our
White is someone that
identities.
carefully considered his words, so
Mm,
what did he mean by fierce?
fierce. Violently hostile or
Okay,
aggressive
there
in
we go.
temperament, or marked by unrestrained zeal or
Okay.
vehemence.
Okay.
I read it more like
Marked by
very
unrestrained
deeply
zeal.
pointed questions.
Yeah,
you know.
maybe questions that aren't afraid to
Mm.
confront,
Okay.
they can be confrontational, like maybe even confronting
yeah.
ourselves.
One of those, what are you doing with your life question.
Okay.
Ever ask those questions? Sometimes we treat these big questions like they're like a novelty, or like something to just dabble in. Well, what's the purpose of life?
Like philosophical
Yeah,
questions.
let's go out and talk about that. Let's make that our conversation at the cafe today, or at the coffee shop, and conversation at a cocktail party. But the truth is, it's not like a hobby to ask these questions. These are like the essential questions that you should have scripted in your brain already with some answers. Because whether we know it or not, we're building our house of, it's a foundation of what we build every day. It's the why we go to work. It's the why we save money. It's the why we have a family. It's the why it's the foundation of everything. And it's like we are building massive mansions sometimes without a foundation on shifting sand. So most of us grew up, I don't think these were, I can't say that, but these weren't the questions we were taught to
What do you
ask
mean?
ourselves.
You mean like the big philosophical questions about life?
The deep, why are you here? Who are you?
Uh-huh.
What's our purpose? What is our contribution in this short life? This is the why behind the doing. And I know when I was growing up, I don't know if there was running through your family like the what are you going to do with your life. Ours was, in my family, it was sort of simple. It was just go to college and figure out what you want to do. But it was nothing more than that. And if you said, I don't want to go to college, I want to ask some different questions, that was like, no. That's education is the foundation. But let's face it, you could use education to do horrible things as well. It wasn't education mixed with values. Your values was somehow just sort of bred into you.
Yeah. I think there wasn't a clear definition of what are we aiming at in life. It was kind of more like, in life we want to be comfortable and stable and find pleasure. And so our questions are more shaped around that than kind of like understanding what are we doing here, or what is this, what is the purpose of life?
I mean, my parents were reasonably cool. Do whatever makes you happy. I'm happy if you're happy. But like, why are you here? What are you doing? These are the questions I started asking as a young man. Like, why do I want to be successful? I think because, when youth of today sort of got big, I started realizing, like, is this the goal here, to try to get popular? Is this the goal here to win people over, to like endorse you or validate you? And it seemed like I haven't really changed. I haven't really like become wise. People are treating me like I'm somewhat wiser now. I'm not wiser. I'm the same dumb I always was. I need some, and because I was reading books of spiritual personalities and their realizations, I thought I want to be like these people, these saints, these sages, these introspective hermits, these philosophers. I felt like, what can I learn to be like them? What essential teachings am I missing to be like them? So that sort of like prompted me. And then, of course, in Bhakti, that's one of our opening gambits of when we talk to people, like, well, what are you doing with your life? What do you think the goal of life is? And so these are questions. They're not comfortable questions necessarily, but these are the questions we have to ask ourselves, or else we end up in this uncomfortable position of being very busy doing nothing.
Mm.
And when and we wonder why people are depressed in this world. We wonder why people are depressed because they spent their whole life, they've been goaded by their family, by culture, by come on, do something with your life. It's like, and then if they do something, it's like, do bigger things with your life. And then it's just like, oh, I got to do bigger things. When you don't know why you're doing it, you can feel really empty. So if we don't have that purpose-driven life, you just wake up, it's like, why am I working so hard? For what?
Yeah, and I think if you can get a handle on that first question, like the first question, in other words, like, what is the purpose? What is my aim? What is the summum bonum? Like, what is the most important, most essential thing that delivers the good that I'm looking for in life? If you can get that down, then you can learn to ask all the questions in relation to that. And I think a lot of what we see in this wisdom literature, certainly in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads and in other wisdom traditions, is kind of saying, don't ask questions just from the zoomed in perspective, which is our tendency, but ask them from a zoomed out perspective. Like for instance, we may find ourselves in some difficult situation in life, and the question that we might ask is, how do I get out of this difficult situation? What do I need to change in my environment right now to get out of it? Whereas like a more important question might be like, how did I get into this situation? What is it about how I'm going about life that has caused this situation? Or maybe more importantly, what am I meant to learn from this situation? If I'm suffering in a particular situation, my initial response could be like, how to end the suffering, how to stop the suffering, how to put a Band-Aid on the suffering. But a more important question, from a health perspective, we say, what caused it? And so these wisdom literatures are trying to say, like, how did I get here? What am I meant to learn? What is it, in the context of the summum bonum, and in context of the biggest picture. And so as we enter this 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, each canto of the Bhagavatam has a name. And you know the name of the 10th canto? Here's a hot seat question for you, Raghunath. Clue?
You want to play the summum bonum?
Yes.
Mara
You
said
it with a lot of enthusiasm.
Mara said it. Mara said it.
Okay.
I just feel like, okay, let's play Humiliate Raghunath.
Well, you do it to Mara all the time, and then it's a great
I
fun
know,
thing.
but she's my student. And I got a hint that she knows it also.
Well, I just gave you a couple of hints of it. In any case, you
actually said it.
I said it, yeah.
Yeah.
But
let's see how really bad he is. I'm going to say it, and he's
so
still
that
going
makes
to get
it
it
worse.
wrong.
But there's that really interesting commentary. How does the Bhagavatam is just questions and answers. That's all it is. And it opens up with the first questions where the sages of Naimisharanya are asking Sutta Goswami, there's all this Vedic literature, all these spiritual texts, all these texts that are talking about how to improve our well-being in life. But what delivers the ultimate well-being, and what gives complete satisfaction to the self, to the soul? And then when Sutta Goswami begins to speak, he says, these are the right questions you're asking, right?
Mm.
He says, I've been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy. Why? Because they relate to Lord Krishna, who's the summum bonum. You see that
Mm.
that's the 10th canto is Krishna's life. And he says, and so they are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. And Prabhupada gives this commentary on that where he's talking about, like, if you just look around, this world is nothing but questions and answers. Even the animals, the birds, and they wake up and they're chirping away. They're all asking questions.
There.
But Prabhupada ends that commentary with this. I want to read this to you, Raghunath. You ready?
Yeah.
In relation to questions and the questions that we ask. He says, Krishna is our most intimate master. You see, this is the point. When we get to this 10th canto, it's not just like, oh, story time now.
Right. It almost seems like that's where okay, now we sell these romantic sexual stories.
Or whatever.
Or
Um,
kill a demon.
Children's stories.
It's like the Grimm's. It could be like the
Fables.
Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah, and it's more than just morals that we're getting from them. So we're approaching the summum bonum, the root of all existence, and that entity that we have, even though we're unaware of it, that we have the most deepest and intimate relationship with, who's there in our heart at every moment, and we're blind to it. So Prabhupada writes, Krishna is our most intimate master, friend, father, or son, or object of conjugal love.
Mm.
Forgetting Krishna, we have created so many objects of questions and answers. Just turn on YouTube, but none of them are able to give us complete satisfaction, Atma Supersiddhiti.
Mm.
All things but Krishna give temporary satisfaction only. So if we are to have complete satisfaction, we must take to questions and answers about Krishna. Now, this isn't a religious, when we hear this, don't put it in a religious context like, oh, God is special and therefore, but the idea is, what is God? What is, just looking at it more like ontologically, it's kind of like if you're telling a leaf, like, the most important issue in your existence is your connection to the root of this plant. That's not like a religious thing. That's just like a practical ontological understanding.
Right.
And so Prabhupada's writing it this way, all things but Krishna all things but this root are not going to nourish you, leaf, and it's similarly, all things but Krishna give temporary satisfaction only. So if we are to have complete satisfaction, we must take to questions and answers about Krishna. We cannot live for a moment without being questioned or without giving answers. Because the Srimad Bhagavatam deals with questions and answers that are related to Krishna, we can derive the highest satisfaction only by reading and hearing this transcendental literature. One should learn the Srimad Bhagavatam and make an all-around solution to all problems pertaining to social, political, or spiritual matters. And Prabhupada writes earlier, dharmic matters. Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna are the sum total of all things. It's an ontological kind of message that don't just take these things about Krishna as story time, but try to see it from this, I guess, more ontological, more metaphysical kind of understanding that now we're talking about the most special, central topic there is to talk about, and that's the life of Krishna. And it becomes meaningful in so many important ways, socially, politically, spiritually. The answers are found in the questions that will be asked about Krishna and the answers that are given. So it's like, here we go. We're diving into it.
Very interesting. I was thinking that say whatever you want about this bhakti philosophy, but there's a specific questions and there's a specific beginning point and there's a specific goal. And we sort of like know the track we're on. And when we're born into this world, it's almost like, remember the old Jeep? There was one time in history, it was like 2 years, where you get a TomTom. That was like the GPS. When GPSs first came out,
TomTom?
they were called TomToms. And they were just sort of like, you put it on your dashboard. It was the first time before they had maps on phones. And they were directionals. And you couldn't even think about entering San Francisco or New York City or Mumbai without one of these TomToms, just to give you directions. And most of us live our life just like without any direction, without any map, without any guidance, just like driving around the city. What do you want to do next? What should I do for a job? I have no job. I'm going to go apply for some job. I have, and then I got laid off from this job. I'm going to try any other job. Who will take me in this job, or a relationship, or that relationship? And sometimes a relationship works, and I pop out a couple kids. And sometimes that goes in a direction. It even gets out of the city, but maybe it falls short or doesn't give a goal that leaves me completely joyful, or my partner leaves me. And then I feel like now I'm completely dismantled. I got to go back to the city and get lost in that. When you're on a track, and in Bhakti, the track is sort of laid out. We've got to recognize ourselves as spiritual beings. We got to get back on track with that, and we got to move forward. And all those other things like jobs and families and homes and even making money and saving money, all those things come into picture. And even if we get sort of hijacked from the same things, we get fired, our partner leaves us, or there's a death in the family, something like that can really throw us off. We still understand the path and where we got to go. We just got to pick up and just stay on track, so to speak. Even when we go off our track spiritually, in the back of our minds, we know I'm off track. So yeah, these are these Maha questions that need to be almost. It's like if we haven't figured this out, today's the day to figure this out, or to ask the questions, or at least perhaps examine. If you're new to this, examine where we're saying the goal is and what we say the path is, and see if that sort of like works with your life. Because otherwise we get caught in this busyness and we just spend our whole life driving sort of like in circles. And even if you're like flying and you're actually, no, my money's good, my family's good, we can also be flying and making great speed in the wrong direction.
You okay, Raghunath?
Woo!
Want to lie down?
Had to get that out of me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, sir.
Wrong direction.
TomTom. You never had that. You didn't have a car, Kaustubha.
I haven't driven a car in at least.
You know what?
Years.
We're going to go out to a field or a parking lot and say, get in. You're going to drive my truck around.
All right.
All right?
Yeah.
All right.
I asked you to let me drive the tractor when I was up there.
Yeah, you can't drive the tractor.
No.
You're not allowed to drive the tractor.
That's your thing.
Well, you might roll it. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated. And loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Agyanat Timarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshuranmritam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my teachers are opening my eyes. With a torchlight of knowledge, I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Hey, question for you.
Yeah.
What is
Let's
the
see
name
if this
of
is
the
a
10th canto?
fierce question.
What is the name of the 10th canto? Not in English, which is Latin, the summum, bonum. Like, what's the Sanskrit translation for that? Besides that sounds like Prabhupada's translation, but he translated into a Latin phrase.
Right.
Marge, do you know? I don't know. Be interested what the Sanskrit of it.
From the 10 subjects of Bhagavatam?
Wait, Morris.
Kaustubha can check it out. There's Poshanam, Stiti. It's explained in the second canto. They are all the 10 subjects.
Okay, it's one of the 10 subject matters of the
Yeah,
Bhagavad.
well, here are the 10 subject matters.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, from what I understand, that they're not necessarily, one canto may deal with several of them, but in general, you can kind of assign one to a canto.
It's good to hear these, though. These are the
Yeah.
10 subject matters that the Bhagavatam covers.
Okay, so the first one is Sarga, which means creation. And then and that means, I believe, Vishnu's creation of the universe.
Okay.
And then there's Visarga, which is the sub-creation, which I believe speaks about Brahma's creation beyond that. Right?
Hmm.
I may be wrong about that, but I believe. Then there's Sthanam, the planetary systems. Poshanam, the protection by the Lord. I know the 6th canto is dealing a lot with that, where you have a Jamil story and so on. Then you have Uttaya, the creative impetus.
Hmm.
Manvantara, which is the changing of the Manus. I think the 8th canto is a lot of that. Then Ishanukata, activities of the Lord. That must be, especially 10th canto.
Hmm.
Nirodha, the dissolution. And Mukti, liberation. And Ashraya, the shelter.
Hmm.
So those are the 10 subjects.
Interesting. Okay.
All right.
All right. So this is exciting. This is
Ready?
sweet baby Krishna right here.
Chapter
Text
1.
1.
Chapter 1, entitled
The Advent of Lord Krishna. Isn't that
Introduction.
exciting?
You look like you perked up a little bit there.
The King Parikshit said, "My dear Lord, you have elaborately described the dynasties of both the moon god and the sun god, with the exalted and wonderful character of their kings.
Mm-hmm.
O best of the Munis," Muni's like a great thinker, "you have also described the descendants of Yadu, who were very pious and strictly adherent to Dharma.
Yes.
Now, if you will, kindly describe the wonderful, glorious activities of Lord Vishnu or Krishna, who appeared in that Yadu dynasty with Baladev, his plenary expansion."
All right. So yeah, we were, especially in that 9th canto, we were getting long lists of names as we're coming down the family trees, and again, in most cases, the name was mentioned, hardly anything was said, or nothing was said. This person had a son named this, and this person had a son named that, and we just followed it down. And on occasion, Shukadev Goswami would expand on one of those names and tell a little bit about them, and we'd learn something about them, and maybe some important lesson. And in a few cases, he expanded that to like a couple chapters.
Mm.
But with this name, when it came to Krishna's name in that list, it wasn't just even a couple chapters. It opened up to an entire new canto of 90 chapters just about this person, right? Because he's that central and that important. Now we hear about Krishna.
Okay. Text 3. Can you hear me, Kaustubha?
Yes, I can.
The Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the cause of the cosmic manifestation, appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. Please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character from the beginning to the end of his life. Woo!
So yeah, it's not any character we're talking about, not even a glorious or famous or powerful or influential person. It's the cause of the cosmic manifestation that we're talking about.
Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from the spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false, temporary glorification of the cosmic manifestation.
Right.
That's a great line, isn't it?
Yeah.
People all we do is glorify the cosmic manifestation, whether it's in the mode of goodness or in the mode of ignorance. We're glorifying the cosmic
Some
manifestation.
detail of it, some insignificant
look
detail.
at this. Oh, that's cool. Did you see that? Whoa. We're just glorifying the temporary manifestation. Such glorification is relished by those no longer. Okay. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorifications of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self?
Mm.
Right? The butcher's just murdering and not thinking twice about it.
You know, there's a couple real important things in this verse. And again, I think these are things that we shouldn't just we should try to understand the seriousness of what's being conveyed through it. Like, for instance, and again, this is Maharaj Pariksit speaking. He's saying that the descriptions of Krishna, which is what this 10th canto is going to be, is the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. And to a person that's not from this broader tradition, that might just sound like a religious statement. But from someone within the tradition of Vedanta, that's a very pointed kind of statement. That because, you know, there's these different, you know, there's all these Vedic texts, the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra. There's three, you know, that are considered the basis of Vedanta: the Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutra, and the Bhagavad Gita, right? And all of these really important schools of philosophy, what they hold, there are these different schools in Vedanta, and the things they hold, there's commonalities amongst them. They all accept these three sources as being, you know, authoritative. They all accept that we suffer due to ignorance of Brahman, right? We suffer due to ignorance of knowing the source of our existence. They all agree that we're not the body and we're not the mind. Are you with me here, Raghu? Are you frozen? Raghu's frozen, so I guess I'll go on for a while until he comes back. All these different schools of Vedanta say that we gain knowledge of Brahman, we gain knowledge of our source through some kind of spiritual practice. And that through that knowledge that we gain, we can achieve freedom, we can achieve moksha. So like all these different important philosophical schools share that, but there are differences between these philosophical schools. The difference in understanding what is the nature of the source of all existence, of Brahman. What is the nature of this world? Is this world illusory or is this world real? You know, what is the relationship between Brahman and this world? What is the relationship between Brahman and us? Some people think that we are Brahman and there is no individuality, you know. What does moksha look like? What is it that's achieved through gaining this knowledge? But what this verse speaks to is what practice delivers moksha, right? What is the spiritual practice that's most suitable or efficient for delivering one from the ongoing repeated cycle of birth and death? How does one become free? And this verse speaks to that. It's not saying that you walk away from home and practice austerities or that you engage in some kind of deep philosophical process of analyzing your mind and your desires and so on. But what it's saying is that descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. And again, the idea here is that this isn't just story time. When you hear the pastimes of Krishna, it's not some quaint, kitschy, it is fun, you know, but it's not just some kind of fun thing, but it's actually the most potent and powerful medicine for curing the disease of our material attachments that keep us stuck in a cycle of repeated birth and death. Are you here, Raghu?
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm present.
Thank you. And then the other thing in this verse is that I mentioned this thing about the butcher, right?
Yeah.
It's like saying like any smart person will engage with this content and become liberated, right? It's so potent, except the butcher or one who's killing their own self. In other words, that can have a couple of meanings. One is that the Vedas teach about sacrificing animals, right? There's parts of them that teach that, and it's
Never
like,
thought about that. Yeah.
yeah, if their goal, when they take this broader Vedic literature, they say, oh, the goal is to gain material good by ritualistic sacrifice. If then your desires become the truth blockers, right? My material desires overwhelm my ability to receive the message. The message is telling you, let go of everything and find the dormant love for God that's in your heart. But you're like, no, I want to hold on to the things of this world. Right? Then we kind of like build a wall to that understanding. And what to speak of just the idea that the cruelty, like people that are cruel, that aren't opening up to the idea that the Supreme Lord is within the heart of every living being, and so on. And then even they hear these things, they'll have trouble transforming.
Okay, text 5 through 7. Taking the boat of Krishna's lotus feet, my grandfather, Arjuna, and others crossed the ocean of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, in which such commanders as Bhishma Dev resembled great fish that could very easily have swallowed them. So they're using this beautiful analogy of that horrible war, where it's like how do they deal with that war? They took shelter of Krishna in that war,
Right.
and there were so many other powerful people like Bhishma Dev, and if it's an ocean, Bhishma Dev would have been like a big whale shark, just like would have swallowed you up. Did you see that in the news the other day that this guy got swallowed by a fish?
I didn't see that, Raga.
That was a thing. Did you see that?
Fake
The
news?
kayaker just got swallowed by a whale,
Whoa.
and it was on video.
And he survived. He was
And he
okay.
survived. He was in the belly of the beast.
Oh, I do think I heard. How did he get out?
He started a campfire in there.
Okay.
And he had to release him.
All right, good.
No, I don't know. I think he just burped himself out. And the fish burped him out. He spit him out.
Okay.
They're not very tasty kayakers.
Uncomfortable.
Taking the boat of Krishna's lotus. Okay. By the mercy of Lord Krishna, my grandfathers crossed this ocean, which was very difficult to cross. Isn't it cool to think of Arjuna as a grandfather?
Okay.
Come on,
Well,
throw me something here.
Huh?
Okay, crazy. It is. You never think of Arjuna as a grandfather. You think of him as Krishna's friend. You think of him as one of the Pandavas. But here he's talking about like how you look at your grandfather in a photograph. Oh, my grandfather. This is Arjuna was somebody's grandfather. I'm making Arjuna more three-dimensional. That's what Stuba. It's not a crazy thing I said.
I didn't say it was crazy.
No, you laughed at me and you said,
I didn't
"Come
laugh
on."
either. I didn't say come on.
That's what you're thinking. Come on.
Okay.
By the mercy of Lord Krishna, my grandfather crossed this ocean, which was very difficult to cross, as easily as one steps over the hoof print of a calf. Because my mother surrendered unto Lord Krishna's lotus feet, the Lord, Sudarshan Chakra in hand, entered her womb and saved my body, the body of the last remaining descendant of the Kurus and the Pandavas, which almost was destroyed by the fiery weapon of Ashvatthama. Mara, who's his mother? Who's King Parikshit's mother? No looking.
Uttara.
Uttara, boom. Mara. She doesn't mind being put in the hot seat because she's got all the answers. Lord Sri Krishna appeared within the outside of all material embodied living beings by his own potency in the form of eternal time. That is, as Paramatma and as Virat Rupa. And he gave liberation to everyone. How does he liberate them? Either as cruel death or as life. Kindly enlighten me by describing the Lord's transcendental characteristics.
Wow. Yet so many things in these verses, right?
I know, it's packed.
Yeah. It's first of all, it's just like, here's Maharaj Parikshit, who, we kind of began this story with back in the first canto. And now we built all this way, and now we've gotten to the topic of Krishna, and he's saying, it's this person, Krishna, in my family, going back. He's always been the shelter. He's always been the one in my family that we've turned to, in the most difficult circumstances. My grandfather and his brothers, my mother, and now me, as I'm about to face death, right? As death is coming very shortly for him, he's saying, let me also take shelter of that Krishna. And again, it's it's not just because our family has an inclination towards him. You know, this is, you get this in India, right? Like, what's your family's Ishtadeva?
Ishta.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
we're into, you know, Lord this or this goddess or this or that. It's not like a random thing, but he's kind of speaking on that Vedantic level, you know, like because he's the Paramatma, right? He is that Vishnu from which the universe emanates, and he penetrates through the entire universe. You know, he is the Virat Rupa. This, all those questions that we're asking about, you know, what is the nature of Brahman? What is the nature of this world? What is the nature of Brahman in relation to the Jiva?
Mm.
He's saying this person is unique because of his central role in answer to all of these most fundamental questions of Vedanta.
If you missed that story, it was quite a it was quite a edge of your seat story when he was in the womb of
Yeah,
he was the last of the Kuru dynasty, and everybody knew that. So
everyone had
at
just
the
died in
very
the war, right?
yeah, so and he didn't die. He was about to be born. He was going to head up and so the enemy fighter Ashvatthama, he threw a mystical mantra at the belly of the mother Uttara, and instead of dying from it, which he should have rightly died, Krishna appeared to him and protected and absorbed that mantra.
Well, there's that
And
scene where Uttara is running to Krishna, right, and saying,
Mm.
"Please protect me."
yeah, very
And then it
powerful
said
stuff.
that in the womb he saw Lord Vishnu, Krishna in the form of Vishnu, protecting him. And
Right.
therefore, the name Parikit means the I think it means like the examiner, right? Like
Yeah,
he's always looking. Where is that great being who protected me in the womb? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?
where is that's the question. Where is the Lord?
Mm.
Mm. Okay, let's get another. We finished that. Text 8. My dear Sukadev Goswami, you have already explained that Shankarshan, who belongs to the second quadruple, what? Appeared as the son of Rohini named Balaram. If Balaram was not transferred from one body to another, how is it possible that he was first in the womb of Devaki and then in the womb of Rohini? Kindly explain this to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second quadruple means that Krishna expands in different ways. And so part of those expansions is the quadruple, what is it? Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna.
Yeah.
Right? It gets technical, but these are different Vishnu expansions of Krishna. And so he's saying that Balaram, Krishna's brother, is also known as Sankarshana. And this question goes directly to that because we're getting all these questions are going to start to be answered in the next chapter. But how did Balaram appear? Balaram is Krishna too, right? It's like, in one sense, it's Krishna's first expansion, and Balaram is such a central character right there in all of Krishna's leelas. How did he appear? And he appeared. He was born in one womb and was mystically transformed into another one to avoid being killed by Kamsa, right? Which we're going to get into who he is and all of that. How did that happen? And Sankarshana means, I think it means one who was transferred. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to leave a little time because we have this great wealth of spiritual information here in the form of His Holiness Satchidananda Swami. I'd love for him to comment on something. I'll just read this maybe verse 9. Why did Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, leave the house of his father, Vasudeva, and transfer himself to the house of Nanda in Vrindavan? Right? He has different parents. He has birth parents, so to speak, and foster parents. Where did the Lord, the master of the Yadu dynasty, live with his relatives in Vrindavan? We should bring on Maharaj. Maharaj, would you like to give us a little excitement for Canto 1?
Chapter 1.
For Chapter 1 of the 10th Canto?
First of all, I'm very happy to be here and very well rested and fully restored by the good food which is available here on Super Soul Farm. And yes, let me just see. Oh, yeah, now it works. I liked very much how you entered this 10th canto. You were talking about fierce questions.
Mm.
Um, and I believe, as all of you who listen to this amazing podcast, Wisdom of the Sages, either one episode or thousands of episodes, it's always important to ask the right questions, because it's questions which will make the text come alive to you. Questions and their answers, of course. And I want to give a very interesting episode from our from I speak German and I come from Germany, which my father once told me. Unfortunately, my father was part of the Nazi regime of Adolf Hitler, and he regretted this severely and took psychological treatment to readjust his mindset afterwards. But he told us one evening a story as we little boys were eating. Uh, Little boys means my brothers and me. We were eating with our parents. Uh, about a person who asked the right questions. And it is often the right questions which get us out of our being stuck or dilemmas, or the right questions put us on the right way. It was one person called Lev. I believe he was, if I remember correctly, a Polish Jewish person who was captured by the Nazis and put into the concentration camp. So every day he had to see how thousands of his people were cruelly executed and killed, either by gas or by shooting. And he saw the panic in the camp of his friends and his people who were with him in the concentration, as they were slowly approaching either the gas chambers or the execution line. Now, all of these people were just totally overwhelmed by fear and anxiety. Lev, however, asked a question. He didn't ask, what is happening here? He asked, how do I get out of this? And this question saved his life. He saw how when the dead people, the dead people were loaded on trucks, I mean the dead bodies, and the trucks transported them outside of the concentration camp, where they were thrown into these huge holes and thrown inside. So in the night, Lev did something which was totally inspired by the question, how do I get out of it? Not what is happening here. And he climbed on the truck. He somehow shuffled himself under the dead bodies, which were already loaded on the truck, so that they could be transported in the morning to these massive graves. And he stayed all night in under these dead bodies. Not the best place to have a healthy sleep. And in the morning, the truck started and drove him out of the camp. And he pretended still to be dead, and he then was, loaded into this graves, and the next night he escaped from these graves, and they were open graves because they needed to be filled up to the brim. My point here is, he asked this question, how can I get out? He did not ask what happens here, and so on. And it is often the right question, not necessarily the answer, but the right question, which can motivate incredible forces in your life that change your life. I really want to request all of you to find questions in your heart that bring you out of a stuck position, or to the best form of the life. And I feel here the Bhagavatam is highly inspiring because it many times asks these amazing questions. What is the purpose of someone who's about to die? That is one big question of the Bhagavatam, because Parikshit, the central questioner of the Bhagavatam, had only 7 days to live. He was cursed by an infallible curse to die within 7 days. And he asked this question, what is now my purpose? I mean, and the Bhagavatam says, everyone on the podcast and their cats and their dogs and their little babies is going to die. So what gets you out of this? So this question of this Lev, I forgot his last name. It started with S, I believe. It was a long Polish name. I saved him to get into freedom. I think all of us, when we follow the Bhagavatam and learn to ask these questions, and very often, my dear people, these questions are not questions which you find in the newspapers. They are not questions which you find in your ordinary life. They are very often outside the box of your life, and therefore you may need some inspiration, like Mr. Lev had an outside the box question. No one thought it's possible to get out of that. I mean, there were dogs who guarded it. There were guards with machine, I don't know, machine guns, if they had machine guns. There were high electrical wires. There were every conceivable security measure there to avoid people fleeing, because if people fled, they would tell the other Jewish people, when the train comes to bring you, it will be a train, the death train. The Nazis tried to mask this as, we're just settling you to a better location, they said to the people. Here is to get into the train. The Nazis needed to mask and hide their activity. So it was highly guarded. But he asked this question, which no one of his comrades was able to ask, and it activated answers. So yes, this is my little 2 cents worth of contribution to this wonderful show. When I was just peacefully sitting there, and then Raghunath says, "Do you have something to contribute?" And okay, what? This is ask the right questions.
Yeah, we're going through this whole life without asking these questions.
Yeah. And you're right. Please say, if you go through the whole life with asking the question, you will be imprisoned in a certain mindset, and you will miss out on what this life has to offer you. You will just never think about it. You just as if you have a helm of misinformation on your head that constantly puts impulses in your brain and lets you walk around the trodden path.
Thank you, Maharaj.
That was a nice way of putting it. You remain imprisoned in a certain mindset. We don't. The
Yeah.
questions are the way to break out.
Well, thank you, Maharaj, for joining us. For being part of us. And tomorrow we're going to miss you when you take off. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And in the 10th canto, one of our listeners, Gyana Gumya. I don't know if you know about Gyana Gumya. He's got a T-shirt company called 10th Canto. Let's see if he posted the. Maybe you could post it online what his T-shirt company's called. But he's got some cool stuff. Anyway, thanks everybody, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody this evening on Wisdom Sages. Not tomorrow evening. Wisdom Sages retreat upstate. It's a little wet. Bring a raincoat if it might rain. But just to have people close, eating, singing, reading, enjoying nature together, I'm very, very much looking forward to it. Next stop, Italy. Next stop, Italy.